we focus on our ideal patient, our life is so much easier, our practice is less chaotic, and our team enjoys going to work a lot more. So if you focus on that ideal patient, a ton of other things really come together.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Raving Patients Podcast. I want to thank the sponsors, both Dental Intelligence and the Doc Sites, for their support, allowing me to do this every single week and come to your inbox every single week at 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I also want to remind everybody about my event coming up September 27th and 28th in Scottsdale, Arizona. It's Supercharge Your Dental Practice 2024. Again, it's in Scottsdale, Arizona at the Scott Resort and Spa. You can check out superchargeyourdentalpractice.com and use the code RAVING to save another $100 on registration. So I hope to see you out in Scottsdale for that amazing second event that I'm doing. My guest is Kirk Teachout. So Kirk is a business coach, serial entrepreneur, and best-selling author. With the launch of his latest venture, the 7-Figure Dentist Program through fourth quarter coaching, he now unlocks secrets of dental practice management. His 4 pillars, culture, team, systems, and schedule, are the secrets to successfully scaling dental practices without burning out. Please welcome to the Raving Patients Podcast, Kirk Teachout. Kirk, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Lynn.
To begin with, I just like to lay it on the line for people. Expand on your background a little bit. Tell people, how you got in the industry, and how you help them.
Yeah, of course. So I get this mistake all the time. I am not a doctor. Okay, I'm called Dr. Kirk or Dr. Teachout all the time, and I don't correct people, but I'm not a doctor. Okay, my wife is the dentist, and she graduated 7 years ago. And associated for a couple of years, and was like, okay, the only way I can pay off this $500,000 of student debt quickly anyway, and have more time freedom and more decision making, was to go into practice ownership. So she was like, okay, well, if I do that, will you help me? And I was like, okay, yeah, I mean, I can do it. I've built businesses before, but I'm from the music industry. I am not from the dental world at all. So to come from an industry that's so subjective that, I create things and products and stuff that only I love, and I have to beg and plead people to purchase it with our music and all sorts of stuff, was very interesting. But it gave me a leg up because now I'm pulling so much outside industry experience from having to create an amazing experience for people into the dental field and knowing how to do that quickly. So when my wife asked me if I would help, I'm like, sure, business is business. So I came into the dental field. We bought our first practice in September of 2019, which if you do the math, that's 6 months before COVID. And then COVID hit. But when COVID hit, obviously, like my wife being a female, we had 2 little ones at the time. She was just having the time of her life. She went from, coming home, being upset every single day because it's overwhelming when you first buy a practice, to now being shut down and being at home with the kids, playing, in the street, when there weren't cars going by or in our backyard. And, she loved it. So when we had those 2 months off, we really sat down to really think, okay, what do we want? And how do we want to do it? And so that's really what sparked this creativity that we really had to try to figure out, okay, can we do it on 3 days a week? Can we have more time off than we have on at the office so we can spend time with our little ones? And now we have 4 kids. We're done though. We're done. But we have 4 kids now. We want to be able to spend the time with them while they're young instead of just working, trying to hit our goals. But we also want both. So now we're able to hit our goals financially as well as have the time off.
I think everybody would hopefully want that in their careers. I just hosted a mastermind event with my friend Dave Steck in Puerto Rico, and there were dentists working, 5 days a week, and they were bringing in take home pay of about $150,000. And they were working their butt off, and they were not really enjoying things because they realized that their financial outtake weren't equaling how much time and effort they were putting in there. So I'm really excited to delve into these topics with you, cause you've done it. So let's start off with how are we able to only work 3 days a week and have a 7-figure practice?
Man. Okay. So everything boils down to what James Clear says in Atomic Habits right there at the beginning. He says, we don't rise to our goals, we fall to our systems. And so we're only going to get as good as our systems allow. Whether it be the systems with the team training, whether it be the systems with the front office, whether the systems with the clinicians, you can only be as good unless you just luck out as your systems. And so I take a very systematic approach to everything and a very intentional approach that we do. So the way that we really are able to work 3 days a week is by using Parkinson's law to our advantage, which means that you really fill the time that you allot for the task. So most doctors will say, oh, I am so busy and I'm working 5 days a week. There's no way I could go down to 3 days a week. Like, I guarantee if you rearrange your schedule just a little bit, you're probably not as busy as you think. It just feels busy. And it's easy to be busy, but it's harder to be smart and productive. And so what we did was essentially like, okay, look, if it snowed on a Monday and we had to fit patients in on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we would have to figure it out. So every single week, we've just had to learn how to figure it out. And then it becomes normal. It becomes very systematic in how we approach it. And so we get very efficient on our scheduling. We dictate our schedule. We don't allow our patients to dictate our schedule. And we are still able to provide high quality dentistry that's only bread and butter. So that's another thing that I get. It's like, oh, well, you guys must be doing a ton of cosmetic cases or a ton of ortho or a ton of implants. They're like, no, we did 8 ortho cases last year. We did 4 large cases last year. And besides that, it's all just crown and bridge, extractions, fillings, and cleanings. That's it.
Let's delve a little bit deeper into that. So it's basically one of the things I really appreciate what you said was that you dictated the schedule. The patients didn't dictate the schedule. And I think that dealing with dentists like I deal with, and I was one myself, as you know, and I did it in my own practice, but I ran a very efficient office. You need to maximize what you get in those days. So you're actually making more money and working less. So when you basically tell the patient the days that they can come in, you don't just say what day you want to come in. Well, we can see you on Friday at this time or Wednesday at this time. And you're basically putting them in where you know that you're going to maximize the value that your schedule provides.
Exactly. And it goes back to like, if you go to a surgeon, right, and you need surgery on your hand or something, they're not going to ask you, okay, well, what day do you prefer and what time do you prefer? No, they're going to say, no, you need to be here Friday at 5 a.m. Otherwise, we're not doing it. So we kind of take that approach in a more friendly way. But then, yeah, we have our schedule set up to where we have larger procedures that are highly profitable. We fill in the gaps with restorative, and then we have contingency plans on if anybody falls off.
Got it. So let's talk about another thing. So what do you find? And remember, you're not a dentist. So it comes from really speaking with dentists and then obviously talking with your wife, who's the dentist. What do you feel is the most difficult aspect of owning a dental practice?
Managing your team.
I agree. Running a business, the team is the most expensive part of running the business. They're going to have the highest amount of overhead, somewhere between 22 and 30%, let's say. It should be a little bit lower, ideally. But they take up the most part of your overhead. You've got all different personalities, all different people. So how do you recommend or how do you deal with managing the team if it's the most difficult part of running a business?
I mean, the first thing you have to do is really sit down and figure out what your vision for the practice is. So if you can sell that vision and that vision be big enough for your team's personal visions to fit up underneath it, and they're going to be able to achieve their goals with your goal, then it's a lot easier to find the right people that want to work with you. And I'd say with you, not for you, because I take a team aspect approach versus a dictator approach of like, we're all in this together. We're going to be in the trenches. We're going to be the first one there, the last one to leave. And we're not going to ask you to do anything that we're not willing to do. And when they see that, they're willing to go above and beyond their job description to make sure that we all hit goals. But the hardest part about managing the team is obviously managing personalities, but also empowering them in their position. So a lot of times, and I just had this conversation not too long ago with someone else, was you have to be good at having difficult conversations and also be comfortable with it. Because if you can nip things in the bud on the front end with a very small, difficult conversation to where it's more loving, then things getting out of hand on the back end where it's now too big and you could potentially lose a team member or other team members with collateral damage, then that's the ideal situation. And my wife has seen that firsthand. I've seen that firsthand where, if we let something go a little too long, then it blows up and you're like, oh, great. Now you have 6 months of really uncomfortable conversations just because people are not happy anymore. Which it could have been resolved with a small conversation 6 months prior. But my wife has also seen on the flip side, it's like when you can have that difficult conversation, like, hey, I know this is what you're doing, but would you mind doing this? And this is why. And I'm going to help you through it. I'm going to give you all the resources. I'm going to lead you through this. Whatever you need, I'm here for you, but this is what I need you to do. Then, okay, cool. That's a much better conversation than on the back end after something's happened. But it boils down to you're only as effective as what you tolerate. So if you tolerate drama and gossip and negativity in your office and you don't do anything about it, then it's going to continue to eat at you and eat at your team, and a cancer spreads really quickly.
Well, I think that also goes to being a good leader, and a lot of dentists are not the best leaders either. So it's a lack of leadership that causes a lot of the issues that are taking place in the practice that you're referring to here. So what are 3 things that as a business owner that you should be focusing on? Obviously, I always say the dentistry is the easy part, but running the business is the hard part. There are so many things you're doing as a business owner. You're doing if you're doing the marketing, you're doing the payroll, you're doing the dentistry, you're doing so many things to operate the business. What do you think are the 3 most important things that you need to focus on as the practice owner?
Right. So piggybacking off of what we just talked about, the one major pillar that you need to focus on is how to lead a team effectively. You've spent $500,000 or more or less, whatever, on learning the clinical side. You've mastered that. So don't try to continue spending all this money trying to learn new things. You need to shift a little bit, for a little while anyway, to learning how to manage a team effectively. And leading that team, not just dictating. But then the second thing, obviously, your clinical skills. Like you need to be good at that. And it takes time. It just does. I've seen it. We have an associate now who is a new grad. She's amazing. But we saw that progression as well, just from my wife's experience as a new grad and then also now our associate. But the third thing that you really need to focus on is business, like you said. So managing a team, obviously your clinical side, just getting better at that, and learning how the little nuances that about, like in a practice when you're doing, like, it's not always hard, fast rules every single time clinically. So then finally that business side, you need to understand how cash moves, and you need to understand how you can maximize the business side of your practice to where you're not working 5 days a week and only bringing home $150,000. Because that's tough, and that's what gets you to burn out really quick.
Got it. So what other things do you recommend focusing on as a practice owner? There's obviously a lot of other things. Where else do you want to put your attention?
Sure. So, obviously you can go into the standards, marketing, advertising, all those things. And we did that early on, but now we don't spend a dime on advertising because we have such a amazing culture, not only with our team, but also with our patients. Focusing on the ideal patient. Once again, I was just talking with somebody about this today, was we focus on our ideal patient. That's all we focused on all of last year. And I actually decreased by 200 patients, active patients, and we increased our revenue by $300,000. So we were able to really focus on, okay, who are people who are not insurance driven, even though we take insurance? They don't allow their insurance to dictate it. Who are the people who we don't dread seeing on the schedule when they come in? Who are the people who we do dread seeing on the schedule, and how can we either have a difficult conversation or dismiss them legal and ethically, and just kind of really get that going. And now that it's going, our life is so much easier. Our practice is less chaotic, and our team enjoys going to work a lot more because you guys are spending all your time in this office. Like, why are you allowing patients to not to where you make it to where it's not enjoyable? So if you focus on that ideal patient, a ton of other things really come together.
Well, it's interesting you state that because, we're so stuck on new patient numbers. and we're so stuck on trying to grow the practice and make more money. But if you tweak the way you're operating, you can actually don't need to accept every single patient. You can accept the ideal avatar that you're looking for. You can make the very difficult decision to dismiss patients from your practice. Now, for someone that talks about this during my seminars, one of the best feelings you have in the world is when you actually dismiss a patient. When you can tell a patient to get the hell out of the office, again, you do it, as you said, legally, you do it professionally, I guess would be a great way to do it. But when you can tell a patient to basically get lost and that you don't want to see them anymore, that is like the best feeling in the world. And if you simply did that to the patients that are the pain in the butts, it will make you so much, I think, functioning so much better. And I did it in my practice a number of different times. I actually have, unfortunately, gone too far a couple of times, being a New Yorker and being very direct with patients. And I basically told a woman good riddance when I got rid of her. And she didn't like that very much. So I know all about that. But yes, it is a culture in the office. But we have to stop focusing. Yes, it's important. Stop focusing on the new patient numbers. Focus on attracting the high quality patients that you want, the ideal avatar that you're looking for, the ideal insurance patient or fee for service patient that you're looking for. Treat less patients in a shorter period of time, and thus make more money in a shorter period of time. So that to me is kind of what you're trying to accomplish here.
Yeah. And that's why at the end of this year, now we're moving more fee for service, because now we've capped out on what we can do. And now we've maxed out on all the bread and butter, and now we're just moving more fee for service, and then we're just going to adjust from there.
A lot of dentists are afraid to drop insurances. They're afraid they're going to lose patients, and you will. And trust me, the patients who are really loyal will stay and they love you, but the patients who are very driven by insurance will go somewhere else simply when you make that decision. But that may not necessarily be a bad thing. And I say that because you will do more dentistry in less time and make more money doing it. I mean, it's that simple.
But let me tell you this too. 3 years ago, I dropped 12 of our worst insurances, which back to the ideal patient, right? The people who had those worst insurances mostly were not our ideal patient. And so we got rid of probably 80 to 90% of our not ideal patients just by dropping those insurances, because once again, they were insurance driven. They were not the right patient. We dreaded seeing them on the schedule. And so it did the job for me. Without having to dismiss patients.
Yeah, that's a great way to dismiss patients without having to actually do it. Just stop taking their insurance. The people that stay, you'll want to stay, but the people who are truly insurance driven will leave, and there's nothing wrong with that. So, I always say this, you take insurance. Insurance is the marketing that you're doing. People don't look at it as a marketing expense, but I truly believe the write-off that you're getting from the insurance companies is a marketing expense and should be attributed to that, because you're accepting a lower fee to see those patients, and that's why they're coming into the practice. So if you are busy, drop the lowest paying insurances. Right there, you're going to make more money and work less. So, but we don't have that mentality. We all want we're scared. We want as many patients as possible. And I think that's the wrong mentality sometimes.
I agree.
Good. So, one of the things which I'm glad you wanted to bring up, and I'm all about it, is patient experience. And patient experience is so important nowadays, especially if we're going to go out of network and not focus so much on the insurances. You have to wine and dine and treat the patients like they're the king, for them to stay. So why do you think patient experience is so important?
Man, I mean, like you said, right? It's all about the experience. And I mean, literally this week, I could tell you, it's like, we ran behind a little bit. We maybe didn't get the what we felt like was the best experience for the patient, for a new patient who came in, but we greeted them properly. We handed off properly. And by the end of the appointment, and I always do this at the front when a new patient comes up before they leave, is I ask them, how was your experience? Because it makes them think, right? It makes them reflect on what just happened. And all she could do was rant and rave about how amazing this dental office was compared to any other office she had ever been to. I was like, okay, so it's not about necessarily what we say necessarily, but in that experience throughout, when you start up here, you can allow a few mistakes and it's still amazing in the patient's eyes. And so, we always talk about providers. We always use the right verbiage. Always have a smile on our face, even when we don't want to, but allow that patient to flow through the office from the first touch point to the last touch point to where they feel appreciated and heard and listened to.
Got it. No, that makes a lot of sense. So anything in particular from a patient experience? I like to give like little pearls on things you do in the practice to make your patient experience next level. So can you give specific examples of some things that you do? And I'll give one to start with just so we all give something here. So I have had a patient fill out two forms. One was a please handle me with care form. And the other one was basically a patient menu. And on the menu, we had, do you want blankets and pillows? Do you want paraffin on your hands? Do you want to listen to music? What music do you like to listen to? I used to put it on an iPod back then. They don't even exist anymore, obviously. We used to ask them if they wanted pre-medication. Do you want Advil or Motrin before your appointment? All things to get them thinking about the comfort side of things. But on the same note, then we also did please handle me with care, which is a very popular form that people are requesting. And if you want it, just email me and I'll send it to you. But basically, it's what are the things that happen in other practices or other experiences that you did not like, so I know to avoid those. So I don't like waiting in the waiting room so many times, so often. I like to know a cost up front. Don't leave me back for long periods of time. I don't like the sound of the drill. I don't like cotton in my mouth. All things that I can avoid to give them a better patient experience. So that is how we up the patient experience in the practice. So any suggestions or any tips or tricks you can give on your end?
Yeah, I would say sweat the small stuff. Right. So like you were saying, like those little things to try to get their mind away from pain and more on comfort. But in a feedback loop like that is amazing. So that was awesome. But I mean, it's literally just the small little things that you say or don't say. Right. So when I answer the phone, I always say, thank you for calling XYZ. This is Kirk. How may I help you? I always say thank you, because they don't have to call us. Whereas I call other offices and they're like, blah, 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 blah.
Doctor's office, hold please.
Yeah. I'm like, yes. I'm like, what? No, like, stop. But I just say simple things like, thank you for calling XYZ. This is Kirk. How may I help you? And I have a smile on my face. It's the small stuff every single time. Like you were saying too, I don't want people waiting in our reception area. It's a reception area or a patient lounge. It is not a waiting room. Okay. And we do not call it that. But our reception area actually is too small for our office, and that's intentional. And if anybody brings, like, if 3 people bring their whole family, like, we're done because like, that's it. But still, like, it's intentional that it's small because we don't want people waiting. We want them in the chair doing work. So that way they're in and out. We're respecting their time. So that way they respect our time. But then, the handoffs are so important. So as soon as I'm on the phone, if I'm scheduling an appointment, I know what hygienist they're going to be with for the most part. I'm like, hey, Leah's going to take great care of you. She's going to be your hygienist. You're going to love Dr. Lauren. She's going to take great care of you as well. I am a little biased. I'm her husband, but that's beside the point. And I make a little joke and then, we kind of go from there. So I'm talking the providers up every single second that I'm talking with the patient. And so when they get to those people, once again, if there's a few mistakes here and there, they don't realize that because we've already started up here. But then when they're in the back, like the assistant will come and get them. They sit them down. They do the little triage like normal. And then they're like, okay, Dr. Lauren's going to be in to take great care of you. She'll be right in. Great care of you. Great care of you. Great care of you. Kirk in the front is going to help you, figure out the finances. He's going to take great care of you. We always find one thing to compliment them on. Like, oh, I love that blouse. That's a really cool color. Oh, I love your shoes. Enough to where when we first started that, there was a lady who came in with bedazzled shoes and every single person said something about her shoes. And she was like, I need to wear these more often. Like, I've never gotten this many compliments. I'm like, exactly. So just small stuff, like just the way you say things, how you say things, and what you say and what you look for, is something that can really elevate the experience without having to purchase anything. Because we also do something with Sean Zayas, that with his toothbrushes.
The Beyond Brush.
Yeah. That we do that for our membership club patients. And so where they get their name engraved on a toothbrush, 5-7 days later, after they sign up for the membership program, which is awesome. And I've had patients come in this past week say, I have a Diamond Clean, but I stopped using it because I love this brush way more. I'm like, I need to text Sean. That's awesome because I agree. I have a Diamond Clean. I stopped using it because I love his toothbrush that much. But it's amazing. These patients, but once again, that's a cost. So I don't always advise people with that, but the small things that you can do is just elevate your verbiage and the way you say things.
Well, I think that's great. And by the way, I have a Beyond Brush and it is the best brush I've ever used. My wife uses it. I don't know what's so special about it, but if you're listening to this podcast, you just got a shout out to the Beyond brush from both Kirk and myself. It is an amazing brush, and it's BYND, but it's pronounced Beyond. And it's through Sean Zayas, who's in the Arizona area. He's got Zana Dental is the name of his company. It's an amazing brush. So shout out to him. We both mentioned it. We both use it. It's great. So take our word for it. And basically the program is that you give it when someone signs up for your membership plan. You tell them it's included. You just give it to them as an extra fee. Okay.
Yeah.
So they sign up for a membership plan. They get it. The brush is not inexpensive, but it's that good, but it has your logo on it and it has their name on it. And they're always going to remember you when they hold the brush. So I think it's a great way to elevate the patient experience. 100% agree with you. Last thing I want to talk about is practice culture. So why is it so important and how do you take it to the next level?
We've kind of already touched on all the things, really. It's like having difficult conversations with your patients. When they're saying things like, I don't mean to be rude, but, and then they say that, 5 times in their appointment. It's like, you can say things like, hey, look, I get it. Like, I know you may be upset. We're trying to do the best job for you here. We want to be able to respect you, but I do expect respect in return. Having difficult conversations with patients so you develop that patient culture, in addition to your team culture. So your practice culture is very important. I can't tell you how many times people came into our practice and have said, man, everybody's just happy. Like they can feel it. Right? When people are happy and when you have your patient culture in check, your team culture is going to be in check. And so it's going back to those main things is like making sure you're having difficult conversations, not only with your team, but also your patients and doing it on the front end versus on the back end when there's a problem.
I agree with you 100%. So, is there anything that we have not touched on that you would like to touch on? Because I'm going to switch to the lightning round Q&A if not, but if there's anything else you want to cover, I'm happy to go over it.
No, that's great, man.
Okay. This is funny. This is the first question. How many hours a day do you work on average?
8.
Okay. If you lost everything you worked for tomorrow, what would be the first step in starting over?
Man, that's a good one. If I lost everything, I would start contacting my network.
Great answer. How did you get your credibility so quickly?
By getting in the trenches.
Getting down and dirty.
Yeah.
What are 3 adjectives that describe your strengths?
Oh man, I was terrible at grammar. I don't pass.
Pass? You passed. Okay. What was the first thing as a kid you wanted to be when you grew up?
Astronaut.
Okay, astronaut. Describe Mondays for you in a single word.
Front end.
Sounds good. What is one thing you've learned from the most successful person you know?
Be comfortable with failure.
Okay. What is the number one tactic that you use to stay organized?
The night before, I write down all the things I need to do the next day.
So like a to-do list?
Yeah.
Okay. What is one thing that doesn't add value to your life, but you still enjoy doing it?
Oh, man. I play Fortnite.
There's nothing wrong with that. Sounds good there. What is your favorite book that you'd recommend other people read?
The Go-Giver. I've bought it over 100 times for people.
Who wrote that?
Bob Berg and John Mann.
Okay. Do you keep a journal and does it help you?
No, it does not help me because I don't do it.
Okay. All right. Last question. What is one subscription? It could be either personal or business. One subscription, personal or business, that you could not live without. So you can't live without this subscription.
Apple Music.
Apple Music. Good. Okay. So, Kirk, very good. Thank you so much. You did pass on one. You're like the first person to pass, but we'll accept.
I'm sorry.
That.
I'm terrible at grammar. I'm trying to think of adjectives.
That's all right. Could have been, dedicated, dependent. There's all different things.
I had no examples. Yeah, normally you have examples in questions.
No worries. It's all good. That's why the lightning round's hard. So, Kirk, if anybody wants to find out a little bit more about fourth quarter coaching and what you do or how you help them, how can they reach out and what information do you have for them?
Sure. Yeah. You can hit me up on Instagram. I'm always there. Also Facebook at Kirk Teachout, both of them. But they can also download a free treatment blueprint that I have the exact verbiage of what my wife uses to be able to close 86% of all the treatment that she presents. So they can do that at treatmentblueprint.com as well, and be able to gain access to me there as well.
And then for those that are curious and they want to kind of do some research, what's the name of your wife's practice?
Covington Family Dental in Covington, Tennessee.
Covington, Tennessee, Covington Family Dental. And your wife's name is?
Dr. Lauren Teachout.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was the same last name. That's why I asked. So Lauren Teachout, got it. Okay, perfect. So this was really good information. Lots of fun conversations. Thank you so much for engaging us for the last 35 minutes or so. Kirk, any final words to the audience before we let you go?
No, just willing to help. I want to help everybody. So.
And that's what's important. So guys, if you were listening to this or watching this, because it's on YouTube and on podcast networks, please reach out to Kirk if you have any information or you want information from him. Remember, you go to his website, treatmentblueprint.com, to download his treatment acceptance blueprint that his wife uses in the practice. If you like the episode, please share it. Please let your colleagues know. Please like us, review us, subscribe, tell your friends to subscribe. Everything that you can do to help promote the podcast, I certainly would appreciate it. Don't forget about Supercharge Your Dental Practice, September 27th and 28th in Scottsdale, Arizona at the Scott Resort and Spa. You can go to superchargeyourdentalpractice.com and save $100 on registration by using the code RAVING for raving patients. I hope to see you there. And as I end every single one of my podcasts, remember, your reputation matters. Till the next episode, Kirk, thank you so much for joining me, and we'll talk to everyone soon.